Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everyone who's joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X, or watching on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television, or you're listening to this as a podcast. We thank you for joining us as well. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, good to see you today. I think we should tell the audience we're running 1 hour behind. We've actually are taping this right now, and you're going to show it at
Yeah,
our regularly scheduled time, right?
yeah. So we're actually an hour ahead.
Oh, ahead. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, we're recording. We record this an hour ahead of when we're playing this. So if you're watching this, we won't be able to display your comments, but definitely make your comments, and we'll look to them for our next episode.
Definitely. But good to see you again, Jeff. We're having the continued heat out here in California. July and August are just really oppressive where I live, and just going through a little more of that. But hopefully it'll be over the end of this month.
Yeah, my doorbell just went off, and I'll let my wife check that. But
Okay.
yeah, today's been an unusual day. I guess we're doing this early. Connor woke up this morning with a fever, so we had him take a COVID test, and he has COVID. I
Oh
think there's
boy.
a lot of COVID going around this summer.
Yeah. I've read about that. Yeah.
So I guess he's got to isolate, stay in his room for a little while, and he'll get to miss school for a few days.
Gotcha. That kid's always like that.
Yeah, so it's not the worst thing
Yeah.
to have, I guess. But I guess hopefully he'll start feeling better. Hopefully later today. Again, I don't. Being most people now have some type of immunity to COVID since we've all either had it or have exposure to it. That it hopefully won't last too long for him.
Yeah. Definitely. Hope so.
All
But
right.
yeah,
Well,
nothing new on the church front. I will be traveling over to our group in Vancouver, Washington at the end of the month, August 24th. I'll be heading up there to speak to the folks.
all right. Well, I'll be at and participating hopefully in we have a thing that we're doing at the end of the month. I'll let our guests talk about that more
Okay.
when we get into it with Lemmy McGarity. Uh, and we will the Unity of the Spirit conference is
Oh
done
yeah.
every like fifth Sabbath. So I think this is the fifth Sabbath. So we'll be doing that in here in Georgia, and our guest will be the featured speaker there, from
Oh,
what I
cool.
understand. So
So
we're gonna
recurring guest. We're bringing him back once again.
yes, we have Daniel Russo. How you doing, Dan?
Hey fellas, thanks for having me on. I'm
Hey,
uh, I'm
good
always
to
I'm
have
always
you.
a high maintenance guest that needs it to be recorded. Eventually, I'll get on for a live one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we appreciate you just being here. So thanks for that, man.
Sure thing.
We're actually gonna get your dad next month.
Yeah, I know.
So he'll be coming on, and I think he's going to be talking about. Oh boy, I forgot the subject. It's September 10th, but I'll let everybody know next week what he'll be talking about.
You guys got him on your podcast before we got him on ours, so that's
Oh wow,
that's an
wow.
interesting
Okay.
phenomenon.
Yeah. We do a lot more episodes. We're every week.
That's
So
that's fair. That's fair. We do once a
Yeah.
month, but
yeah. Yeah, this is up. I think we're up to number 166, if I can remember correctly. So this is can't believe we've done so many, and we've done so many. I forget the ones we've done. So
yeah.
there's so many now.
Yeah, so Daniel, for the folks who don't know you, how about just a little bio info on who you are, what you're doing, and
Sure.
then we'll get to the topics for today.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on the board of directors of a nonprofit called Church of God Network. We help build a sense of community in the Church of God, and we do so through a variety of different means. The mission is to help build community in the Church of God through facilitating connections, encouraging conversations, and giving back. So we have a number of programs. We spend a lot of time meeting people and building relationships and building trust, things like that. As Jeff mentioned, I'll be at the Unity of the Spirit conference as well. Lemmy is a good friend of ours, and he applied for an Ephesians 4 project grant, which is a grant program we have that helps put on and fund events that are open to multiple groups. So he's our grantee. He invited me to speak, so I'll be seeing Jeff live in person at the end of the month.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, we look forward to having you back in Georgia again.
So
Yeah.
why don't we talk about that to start things off, Jeff and Daniel? This conference you got going on in Georgia, and that'll give folks a little bit of understanding about some of the different projects that Church of God Network gets involved in. Jeff,
Mhm.
what's going to be happening, and how does Daniel play into this?
Well, it's the Unity of the Spirit conference, and this happens every fifth Sabbath, run by Lemmy McGarity. I know he's been doing it for quite a while because I remember doing one maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I know he's been they've been going on for a while, and it's just getting together. Unfortunately, just independent churches and CGI, and never really any other of the churches. But we hopefully we can at some point have some other of the ABC churches join in on these Unity Spirit conferences and participate, because really it's all about unity. It's all about we all have one common faith, and we all share that faith, and we all want to just network and come together and celebrate that. And so that's what we sometimes we host them at our church in here in Atlanta, and sometimes they're elsewhere. And this time they will be elsewhere. I'm not exactly sure where it's at this time off the top of my head, but maybe I can give that information on our next episode.
And so then, Daniel, how do you connect with Lemmy, with your organization, and what are you going to be speaking about there?
Sure. So I mean, I met Lemmy a few years ago. We've been in touch with the crew down in Atlanta for a few years. There's a lot of momentum towards people wanting unity to work together. CGI in the area, Independent Church of God of Atlanta, Lemmy's crew, Christian ambassadors. There's a lot of folks within driving distance of each other that have a real fire for working together. So the Ephesians 4 project that I mentioned before, a lot of times either an event, someone wants to have an event happen, or maybe an event's been going on for a while. Like Jeff said, this has been going on for better part of 10 years. But Lemmy's like, hey, we would like to expand it. We'd like to do it in a way that we can involve a few more people, maybe get some different ministers and leaders through different groups to come in. So I helped recruit a couple of different folks to join us this time. I think a few of the people within the Church of God Network circle, some local contacts might show up as well. And he used his grant funds from us to help expand it a bit. In terms of what I am speaking on, the topic right now, in addition, I'm going to work in some updates about Church of God Network because I think that's what Lemmy wants. But I want to talk about meaningful work, the idea that we all are called to the most meaningful work that anyone can be, and we should all find something to do within the context of our calling day to day that serves other people and that we could put our full attention and effort into. And just talk about how rewarding that is, some of the other things that people are doing around the Church of God that are having an impact, and try to inspire folks at the event to take their own bite-sized chunk out of the needs that are out there in the Church of God.
Gotcha. Very good, very good. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you handle the rest of the questions with Daniel now. Sorry for jumping in there. I just
No,
really.
no, definitely is. I mean, I'm glad you're coming out to this, and and I guess my major hope is, and I don't know how the much Church of God network is doing is that we can get some of the other bigger churches as a part of some of these events that we do. I don't know if you had success anywhere else with these things that you can talk about, or where have you had any successes with this?
Well, yeah, that's the other good thing. I mean, the good thing about what's going on with everyone in Atlanta is that even though the crew that normally goes to the Unity of the Spirit conference is largely, like you said, independent and CGI, that's largely because those are the relationships that have already been formed on the ground. But as we build relationships across different groups, there are a number of places where the bigger Church of God groups are involved. In fact, CGN just had a partnership with Life Nets, which is not a church group, but is a nonprofit that Victor Kubik started, the former president of United, that's been around for 25 years this year, actually. And so we partnered to offer one of their grants to celebrate their 25th anniversary. So for 25 years, they're giving out 5 grants of $5,000 to students who want to continue their education. Normally, they focus on the developing world, but for the 25th anniversary, they're focusing on the United States and Canada, sort of as a thank you for donors and whatnot. And for the 5th of those 5 grants, they wanted to partner with Church of God Network to give the grant out across the greater Church of God in a different network of folks that maybe they couldn't reach themselves. So that's a pretty big, again, vote of confidence for Church of God Network, for the movement towards unity and community and cooperation as a whole. There have been a number of events that we've helped fund across the United States that are between, brethren from United and Cagua and Living, or the Church of God the Father's Call. So the various groups are all getting involved. I think what you're seeing in terms of, it's still a little segmented in terms of when the unity events happen. It's sort of people who already have relationships that have been built. That's why trust and relationships are so important for Church of God Network. I think you're seeing the pocket in Atlanta being, hey, we all know each other because we've had a shared history the last couple of decades, whereas if United and Cagua, or the groups that have maybe formed out of the larger ones more recently, they have relationships that are more recent. So when they come to the table, those are the groups usually involved. But it would be nice, as you said, to eventually get those two categories to mix.
Gotcha. Very good, very good. So hey, I experienced, I guess what you would call your conference this year, and could you tell the folks what that is all about? Why you invite a couple people like me and my friend from Father's Call was there, I think, for the first time, and your board was there. And you guys get together, I think, once a year. You invite in a couple people from other church organizations to build relationships. What's that all about? Could you tell the folks about that, please?
Sure, yeah. So it's not so much a conference. I think eventually we would like it to be a conference, grow it over time, but it's more of a strategic planning weekend that we hold every other year that helps the board get together in person, since we are a board that is, scattered across the country. So it helps us build relationships. It helps the board get introduced to some of the folks that I've met in my travels over the years, because we invite maybe 5 or 6 or 10 guests to join us, and we're all in one place for a weekend. It's a way for us to get input from other perspectives about how to best advance the mission, how to do what Church of God Network is doing, things that range from higher level like trajectory or where we should focus kind of things, down to, are we doing a good job marketing? Are there things we could do better in terms of the execution on some of the, maybe more boring details for the average person, but the stuff that's needed to get an organization from point A to point B. So yeah, it was funny. Mike actually, when he was flying out, wound up sitting right next to someone else who was also coming to the weekend, like on the plane. And I think you guys were at Southwest, so it's not like it's not like you met in the waiting area and then chose to sit next to each other. It was completely random.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, I sat right next to a guy who was going to the conference, and he brought up something in discussion with me as we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, something just. I think he sent you a note or something, right?
Yeah, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, what does Mike James look like?"
And so we started talking on the plane, and we're friends now. I text with him a little bit here and there, and he's a pretty funny guy. So it was just like a random event. You meet somebody on the plane, but in this case, it was somebody you were going to meet a little bit later too. So.
Yeah. You all both live in the same area or something?
No.
Oh,
He's in
wow.
Oklahoma City, and I'm here in Fontana, California. And I think it was the second leg of my journey where I picked up the plane with him, and his daughter was there with him too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fun weekend. It's cool to have
Mhm.
everyone out. We try to rotate guests as well. I think in the future we're going to try to get we're going to invite everyone who's been to the first couple plus some new ones. We're hoping to grow it over time, but it's largely to help um, Church of God Network get a range of perspectives in evaluating how we do what we do, if we're on the right track, trying to get as much critical feedback and honest opinion as possible, because I think that's a necessity no matter what it is you're doing.
And I think that's a great point you're making, Jeff. I think you would agree with this, that when we get disparate feedback from sources we're not used to, we hear some things sometimes that we may have never thought about. And you're not going to get that unless you seek it out.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important thing that all churches of God, whether they're independent or corporate or whatever they may be,
Mhm.
you need to try new ideas, try new things on. You don't have to continue with it, but again, when we start talking a little bit later about looking at in the next 10, 20 years for the Church of God in general, I think that there need to be some new ideas, or we may be waning as a force in this world. So that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's trust building too. At least the one it's one of the things that we've seen help build relationships for us, is that when we go to folks and we ask, you know, what are your criticisms? What are we doing that you think that you don't agree with, or that we could do better? What's your opinion on what's going on in the Church of God? Like, the more people you can involve in having that conversation, and the more people will see that you're not hostile to honest feedback, whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in between, that really brings people's guard down. And that's when you could build trust, you could build relationships. People feel like, oh, that person actually took my feedback and listened and heard, and I didn't feel dismissed. Those things go a long way. And I think people would be surprised at how little sometimes it takes to build trust if you're going in with that as the goal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's a great book called Speed of Trust by Covey,
Yeah.
and a lot of good points in that book about how to build trust, how you can lose trust.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really like about what you guys are doing is that face to face meeting. And again, in CGI. Again, cost comes into some of these things, no doubt about it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I think some of our best work was done when we were able to get a bunch of elders together in a location and meet face to face and just have that FaceTime, which really changes the feelings that people may be having with each other than when you're on something like we're on today. Even though this is great, and we should be glad that we have this opportunity technologically, when you're in front of people, there are other things you pick up and that can help in that communication process. And I think you guys got the right idea of trying to continue to keep this going on
And
a
it,
regular basis.
and it's just part of it also is just the investment in the long-term relationships too. I mean, this month is our 5-year anniversary, and so we've been working on a lot of these relationships for quite a while, and eventually they start to bear fruit in terms of, okay, there's trust built, now there's a willingness to work together, or you've established a reputation for being helpful, not asking for things, and so people are more or less
Mhm.
hesitant to partner on things. Between whether it's the Life Nets thing, we're helping one of the bigger groups deal with an international situation where government regulations have made it complicated for a certain country to be recognized as a religious group. So it's like it's not always just getting together to build friendships or relationships socially. A lot of the relationship building is just trying to help out where you can, get on the phone and have a conversation, being in constant contact, and realizing that the benefit is 5 years down the road when the relationship is maybe on firmer ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you plan on doing anything bigger than that, like for churches who want to, get together and network at a central location, like kind of like what we used to do with the was it the where we met in Gatlinburg? I can't think of the name of it. With Jim
Yeah,
O'Brien ran the
like a
quality church
leadership
retreat.
retreat.
Yeah,
Yeah. The goal eventually is to have a more expanded version of these meetings, either every other year, every year. In terms of whether it turns into like a full blown conference, I think depends on the interest level and what we think is the best use of resources. A lot of what we
right.
do is trying to facilitate the connection across groups in terms of like, we just put a small group in touch with United to help with the situation I just mentioned in the developing country. So a lot of it is logistical help. A good chunk of it is relational in trust building, but it's usually within the context of trying to help out on a specific issue, giving grants to people who want to take the impetus themselves, connecting people with other people of like mind. So, but yeah, those conference type things definitely fall within that category. I think probably we're maybe a year or two away from making that a regular thing, but eventually that would be the goal, provided there's the interest in that kind of thing.
And do you plan on doing anything at like Feast of Tabernacles sites, or you have a presence, or some kind of to reach people there, let them know what you're doing and how they can be a part of it?
Yeah, I don't think so unless we're asked.
Okay.
I think anything that we would do around a holy day or the feast would be in partnership with an existing group. We wouldn't want to divert attention from whatever
Yeah.
anyone else is doing. Um, but yeah, I mean, you never know. Maybe there's an appetite to, there's different parts of the country where there aren't feast sites. Maybe a bunch of groups want to get together with Church of God Network and provide a place for people to attend in a cooperative sense. As long as it meets that criteria, we're game for it. We just don't want to take people away from where they already are.
Yeah, because I guess one of your goals is like you're not a church and you're not replacing a church, so you're
Yeah.
trying to fill in other needs that churches don't, I guess, fill.
Yeah, we're trying to facilitate a community that's more cooperative, that fellowships across organizational lines more, that when there's issues, there's more of a desire to reach across groups and work on things or share best practices, sort of reducing or eliminating any hostility that might exist, and then sort of secondarily filling any gaps in in what the church groups are able to accomplish. Like, for example, I don't think I think I mentioned it to Mike on one of our phone calls, but we're gonna start offering web development services for Church of God groups,
Oh,
free or greatly reduced, because a lot of the things that we've noticed is, there might have been sites that were created a long time ago, haven't really been updated much. And a lot of, especially small groups, they don't really have the expertise or bandwidth to continually upgrade sites, keep it functioning optimally, and because they have full-time jobs or just a small group, so providing the service of doing a redesign for them, make sure it's staying updated, it's following best practices, you have access to things like analytics. It's a way to fill a gap that other folks are not currently filling, and it provides a service, because we all have limited bandwidth in the Church of God. So
yeah.
we need a hand sometimes to accomplish things so we can focus on the core mission.
Yeah, I know some of them websites I've seen look like they were on GeoCities. I don't know if you remember that from back in the day. Some of the real old designs, and the under construction boxes and all those types of things there.
Yeah.
So I have myself, as part of CGI's reaching out to other churches. I've developed several independent churches websites for them and trained them on developing websites and keeping them maintained and stuff.
Yeah,
So
well, if
it's
you guys
definitely
want to partner on that, we're
I,
building
I
that.
I would definitely be someone if you wanted to have as a resource, because that's what I've done it. I've done it, before for churches,
Yeah,
for independent church in Atlanta, for Ken Swager's church up in Tennessee, and other various places.
yeah, like Corbin Rose, who's on our board, is we joke, or I joke at least, that he's built half the websites in the Church of God.
Yeah.
Because that's what he does. I learned for the first time that that's how
Yeah.
he got into web development. That it wasn't the reverse. He wasn't a web developer first. He wanted to help the church on the web front. Then he became a web developer as he got older. So he's doing all this stuff, and I'm like, hey man, why don't we just make this like a CGN program? We'll just start offering these things either for free or greatly reduced cost. We provide hosting services as well through either the company we host with or someone else we work with in the Church of God. So you'll have a greatly reduced cost. You'll have a team for support and whatnot, and to do the build. A lot of groups too they don't have any web presence. They're just a small group, and maybe if they had access to a free site or an easy to build site, that they might take advantage of that, so we could know they exist and have a place to point people to if they're going through that area. So yeah, man, we're building a team of volunteers and folks. So if you or anyone else at CGI wants to provide input, we're always game.
Yeah, again, I can always help with that. Just telling you now that I've done that in the past, because
Yeah,
I've seen some sites, and it's like, oh, I can help you,
yeah,
because a lot of times they just don't have anybody who can do it, and they just can just. But I found when I ask people like why they come to our church, most of the time they say because of the website. They come because of our websites to our church, CGI.
Mhm.
That's the number one reason people they'll find us, they'll find the information, and they'll come visit church because of the website. So I think that's
Yeah,
one of the most important things that churches can do, is that website for
yeah.
reaching new people.
It's one of the more obvious needs, and it's
Yeah.
more just a lack of capacity. So now that, again, that's sort of what we're built on. We're trying to build capacity so we could help folks in areas they don't, so they could focus on what matters, which is providing for the brethren in their area, uh, speaking, teaching the Word of God. Uh, who wants to divert time from that to building websites and keeping up with them, especially if that's not something you're passionate about. So
hmm Any other kind of services you think about providing that the churches need, especially small churches?
yeah, so that's the only one we offer widely and publicly right now, other than like the grant programs in case folks are interested in
Hmm.
putting on an event, things like that. But we also have been doing work on sort of a as requested basis for um, particular projects. We partner with some probably they're not independent, maybe mid-sized groups to help with things like doing research on retirement planning, like within the Church of God. So reaching out and surveying our network of contacts about what are the best practices or the common practices in the Church of God in terms of how folks handle ministerial retirement, and providing a report to the group
Hmm.
based on that. So
Hmm.
a lot of what we have now too after 5 years is we have quite a network of contacts and quite a few data sets that are unique in the Church of God that we can
Hmm.
leverage to provide insight to different Church of God groups. So a number have reached out to partner on particular things as they identify needs internally, and they're like, oh, Church of God Network is probably in a unique position to help because they have a different, to our point we were talking about before, different folks with different ideas or expertise to draw
Hmm.
from that are just beyond our small corner of the Church of God.
Very good, very good. Thinking about things like web development and outreach and different things for different churches, it makes me think, as I'm getting older, there's going to be a point where I'm no longer able to do any of these type of things for CGI, and we'll have
Mhm.
someone new, hopefully. Uh, but I
You're
think
one
a
of the
lot
young
of
guys, Jeff.
the Church of God is getting older. Would you not agree that the majority of Church of God is older, probably over 60?
Probably, I don't have specific data necessarily, but
That's something y'all could maybe do a research on, like the demographics of the Church of God.
yeah, I mean, anecdotally,
Yeah.
that's certainly the case. I think the thing too is that the Church of God tends to just be more amplified versions of what's going on in the rest of either mainstream Christianity or religion in general. It's sort of fewer people are religious as a whole. other more mainstream outside of the scope of the Church of God groups have aging populations and the same sorts of issues. It's just like, do we as a community recognize that and try to actively plan for it or brainstorm around it? And I think when you start thinking of those things, that's where the obvious needs for partnership come in. International issues versus domestic American ones. How to mentor and train and identify people to come up in the ministry. Just again, resource sharing as resources might deplete. If a small group has an aging ministry and maybe doesn't have a continuity plan, what are the options? Even just having those conversations is huge. I think we'd be surprised at how few important conversations might happen until they become urgent needs, which is, that's the case in any organization.
Yeah, we have I know at least two organizations that are maybe three or so that are very personality built. Like there's one person who kind of runs the whole church, and those people are not going to be around much longer. So the future of those churches is probably splits or whatever's going to happen there. But it may happen with some of the other churches that seem more stable. What I've never seen. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you ever seen two churches ever come back together or come together to form another church? I've never seen that. It's always been forming more than that.
I don't know in terms of since CGN's been a thing. I don't think I've seen two groups merge. I do know historically that the Church of God Seventh Day had some splits. I think around the turn of the 20th century, and they came back together a few decades later. So there is precedent for it. I am not sure. There have been groups that I know anecdotally have debated as a sort of long-term planning. Do we want to have a plan to just fold into this other organization once the ministry gets retirement age? So people have considered that. It's not unheard of. And you're starting to see really encouraging conversations around those fronts, not just in terms of mergers, but organizations evaluating like, okay, well, we are a group in the Church of God. We've realized that, hey, we want to cooperate more with other groups. We think we still have a reason to exist as a separate entity, but like, let's go back to the foundation. Like, why do we exist? What's our reason for existing? What value do we offer? How can we serve folks, not just who are maybe official members, but how can we serve the rest of the Church of God? How can we support initiatives that are new and innovative within the Church of God, and just think differently about how they do the things that they're doing? We're partnering with an org to have those conversations internally with them, which is really encouraging. And there are other groups or other nonprofits that are doing good work. Like one of the groups we're actually going to start partnering with soon. I actually just hosted the guy at my house, a good friend of mine, Gary Johnson. We had him on the podcast. He runs a ministry called Covenant Concepts, which serves the prison population. So he was called in prison. He has a fantastic and compelling story. Also just an all-around great guy, but he started this nonprofit to get Church of God literature into the prisons, because that's how he was called. And so it's got this dual purpose of being cross-group in nature, because it's literature that's already being printed from the Church of God. He doesn't, he's not rewriting the booklets or anything. So there's a partnership there. He sends self-help books into the prison. That's the main contact with the prisoners. And then he will attach some Church of God literature, and he will say, well, if you're not interested in the literature, no worries, just pass it to someone who might be. So it's in circulation. And because he knows the system so well, he knows all kinds of things you would never think of about how to reach the prison population. And so
that's not an easy thing as some might think. I'm talking to a guy in North Dakota State Penitentiary, and we've been trying to get him some material. And one example is that he could not get it sent from me because I had a lot of booklets laying around. We had to go to headquarters, and then it had to be mailed from headquarters to him
Yep.
because they don't want the prisoners in some of these locations receiving from people on the outside who may send things that aren't supposed to be sent. They want to make sure that it's coming from a certified organization. So yeah, great point you're making there. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's very good at what he does. He has a
Mhm.
unique experience where he now has a unique skill set and insight that I have not come across in the Church of God, and he's trying to leverage it to serve. So we're working on a partnership, an explicit partnership between CGN and Covenant Concepts, where we share our network to help him facilitate Covenant Concepts goals because it benefits both. Like, we want to see groups working together. He's taking literature from all the different groups, requesting it from their headquarters. So he's helping the Church of God get the message out there. He's helping across groups, and we also want to help make Gary available in sort of a informational or consultation role, because I don't think that the Church of God as a whole has prioritized the prison population a ton, but there are people who do go in and focus on that population, and there are just certain things you don't know about the system unless you've been in it, and Gary understands that. So we're hoping to put him in touch with folks in the Church of God ministry who go into the prisons, who are interested in reaching that population, and share Gary's expertise with those folks, because you walk in and your instinct might be to do what the rest of mainstream Christianity does and go to the chapel system and host a meeting. But man, until you talk with Gary about the reason why most people go to those things, you need to be aware of the reality on the inside and how people view the interactions, what people are, how to identify, is this person really interested? Do they have a different motive? And Gary's uniquely qualified. So again, it's one of those things, bridging the gap between the expertise that's out there and the ministry doing the work. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there that or experience to tap into, different initiatives that are going on, whether it's a church group, a non-church organization. So that's part of what we do, is to help connect those various sides.
Gotcha. Hey, we got a little time. I want to get into a discussion towards the end about where we all see the church moving and how your organization might help with that. But before we do that, just anything else for people that are seeing you for the first time, Daniel? I know you've mentioned a number of things already, but what else can CGN, Church of God, do for the church community out there, the Church of God community? What else can you tell us that you haven't already told us today?
Sure, I could give you an update on the local contacts program we have. I think we
Yeah.
mentioned that the last time I was on, and it was just getting
Absolutely.
started. And now we have over 40 local contacts. We're in over half the states in the United States. We're in 7 different countries. So the thing for us on that front is we're identifying people who either already have expansive personal networks or people who really want to build those, and utilizing them in their local areas. So we're building relationships at Church of God Network, but we can't be in every locality all the time. So the idea of having someone who is in a city in Oklahoma and they've been there for several decades, maybe they grew up there, they know the ministers, they know the people really well, they have entrenched relationships, they have knowledge across different groups. Having someone there who knows the reality on the ground and knows what's going on a week-to-week basis, because that's their sphere, the value to Church of God Network is immense, because we get to learn about things going on across the country and the world very quickly. I'm going to an event in Buffalo, New York, because our local contact out in Buffalo let me know that there was a cross-group event happening that I would not be aware of, and most people would not be aware of unless he shared that information. So we do that not only to help Church of God Network, but you can contact the local contacts directly. Like if you're traveling through Florida, or if you're going to move to Florida, and you're like, hey, I'm curious what the situation is like in the area I'm going to, you can reach out to one of the CGN local contacts in Florida, ask them about the situation. If there's an emergency in the Church of God, we utilize the local contacts to go, okay, a tornado just hit this area. You reach out to the local contact and go, are the churches in the area responding in any way? Okay, they are. Who's the contact person that's organizing it? What can we do to help? What can we tell the rest of the Church of God that is needed? It's a way to mobilize resources. It's a way to have an informational network to leverage for sort of anything that comes up. And it's something that does not exist. And information is so important in any context. And so a network of people who have relationships across groups in various states and countries, that's something that we think is going to have immense benefit. Already showing quite a bit of benefit now, but will have increasing impact as time goes on, and to the point where we're transitioning into as the church goes through different levels of either getting smaller or being separated, or persecution hits. Just having that sort of network built, it can be incredibly beneficial.
If somebody who's watching right now wants to be a contact, how would they go about doing that?
So on our website, churchofgodnetwork.org, there is a tab where you can select the local contacts page and apply directly on the website. So you could see, I mean, we don't limit it to one per state. We have several states that have multiple, but you can see if your state happens to have one or not. And there's an application form right on that page. Just let us know what your background is, why you want to be involved, and we'll get on the phone, go through the process. But yeah, we're always looking to expand that network. It's been surprisingly popular for folks because I think the average person really wants to help and serve and get involved, but can't do massive things. So this is a very simple bite-sized chunk of like, okay, all you got to do is meet people, have friendships, stay informed as to what's going on, and make yourself available to help.
Gotcha. Great.
Hey, Jeff, I don't know where we are on time. I know you want to get this live for the next hour here, but with whatever we got left, Daniel, if you could talk a little bit about some of the brainstorming that was done at the conference this year. And one that I'm interested in the people hearing about is like some problems we're looking at, into the future for Church of God, and some issues that are bubbling to the surface, and what those might be.
Yeah, we had a brainstorming session. We had 2 different days of sessions. My brother led both of them. He sort of does this stuff for a living. Yeah. And we tried to have a session where we just thought creatively about the future of the Church of God. So not the immediate future, like 5 or 10 years, but like a generation out. What might be some issues that are emerging, and we just sort of put everything out there and then whittled it down and selected maybe the 2 or 3 ones we thought were a combination of most likely versus the ones that would be the biggest effect. So one of the ones was changing demographics in the ministry. So that's very broad, but it could be, I know anecdotally from just about every organization, that it's hard to recruit people into the ministry, that they're having a harder time finding and identifying younger folks as the church gets older. And if there are things like reduction in numbers, you get you have the need for more cooperation as younger ministers come in. Let's say even they are able to fill some of those gaps, the younger ministry won't have as many connections across groups, which I think the average person would be surprised as to how often the ministry does in fact leverage relationships across groups that may have predated a split. Maybe they're hesitant to do official things together because there are complications at this stage, but in emergencies might say, oh, I went to whatever Ambassador College with that person. There's a connection made, but if that's not going to be extent to the same in the same way with my generation and those younger, so that's an issue. If we do have declining numbers, that presents a different issue. People just think differently across generations. So as new generations come into the ministry, you're just going to have different perspectives, and it's hard to tell what that might. You could speculate what that might be now, but knowing that the only thing that we can say for certain is that things are going to be different
Mhm.
with different demographics. How do we get how does that affect how Church of God Network evolves? How does that affect how the Church of God as a whole should be thinking about the next 25 years in terms of how we do the work that we do?
Mhm.
Yeah, you're hitting on a big one, I think, right there with that generational thing with how people got into the church. Say during my time, it was the printed press or the TV show, as opposed to today. There's just so much more media out there
Yeah.
that I think that
Mhm.
some people say that's good that we've got so many different outlets that people could fall to, but I
Mhm.
think that they can't find some of those things because there's so much out there. And so that's going to impact the gospel message, and the primary work of the church to get this gospel to the world.
And even culturally, you have, in 25, 30 years, unless there's a change in people coming into the Church of God, uh, the fact that when you all were coming in, there were large amounts of people coming in from other religions or mainstream Christianity into the church. You have a lot
Mhm.
of first generation, as it's called. But in 25 years, unless there's another resurgence of that, you'll have a church community largely in it for several generations, and that will affect the culture.
Mhm.
That
Right.
there'll be positives to it, there'll be negatives to it. It's just one of those things that's probably
Mhm.
good to get
I
a head
didn't I
start
didn't
thinking
even
about.
think of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
great point.
Well, I
Yeah.
know, like the churches that are successful in growing numbers, like the Seventh Day Adventists, Mormons, some of these churches, Jehovah Witnesses. They don't really they'll try to recruit people from the outside, but most of their growth comes from having children in the
Mhm.
church. Those children growing up in the church and staying in the church. And I think that's
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, it's one of those things where everything that happens that looks like it might be beneficial might also have a negative externality in terms of
yeah.
when things become generations deep, then a lot of things become tradition as opposed to rooted in truth. It's like, why are you here? Well, my family's been doing this for generations.
Hmm.
uh, uh, Maybe people have less of a knowledge of why they believe what they believe,
Yeah.
because of that traditional aspect, or their whole social apparatus is wrapped up in the church, so it's
Hmm.
harder to leave than it is to stay in. So like all those things, just every problem or every change is so multifaceted in what might come from it. That's why these brainstorming sessions in any context, whether you're a church organization or a nonprofit, are so important. Um, and then, I mean, another thing we talked about and came up with are either persecution or disruption
Hmm.
on a large scale. It doesn't have to be end time either. I think people's mind goes to end time persecution, but
Right.
the world has seen ebbs and flows on that front quite a
Hmm.
bit. And let's say it's not even persecution. Let's say it's just another major conflict between nations.
Hmm.
Are we prepared? Do we have contingencies in terms of how to contact people? Is there, we're hoping to leverage our network at Church of God Network to be one of those things where, like, in case of an emergency, we have a well-built network between individuals to exchange information. But if that wasn't there, what would the Church of God do? Would it further isolate us? Would it prevent information from flowing? So one of our conclusions was continue hammering home the local contacts thing and building those relationships, because those personal networks are going to be increasingly more valuable in contexts like that.
Yeah, I definitely do see a lot of networking within various cities of people in different church groups, independent groups,
Hmm.
who all kind of know each other. And like what's going on in Atlanta, Jeff and an independent group, they sometimes meet together.
Yeah, I
They
spoke
do.
this last week at the Independent Church in Atlanta, and this next week their pastor's speaking at our church.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So we do those kind of things.
that's part of it
exactly.
too. Just like
Yeah,
sharing that it is happening is encouraging to folks. Sometimes just
yeah.
that simple thing has an impact. And it's also funny, lest people think that it's only one segment of the church you got. I mean, most of the people who are our local contacts are from the bigger organizations.
Hmm.
So it's a need and a desire that transcends church situation. The mutual friend of Mike and I, who Mike sat next to on the plane, he came out of the Philadelphia Church of God. So like it's tons of different. It's quite a wide and varied swath of people in the Church of God.
Hmm.
And again, even that's a long-term thing as well. The groups that are fringe in nature or problematic for several reasons. As people leave those groups, and several groups are hemorrhaging people right now who have taken on titles or had false prophecies. Those individuals who might who might be leaving and are part of the Church of God,
Hmm.
they are trying to integrate into a very different environment and come out of a mindset that might be problematic, and they need help. And right now, there's limited focus and resources available for that, and we should be sort of circling the wagons to help those folks. And instead, I think they're left in the wind a bit.
Yeah, you just touched on something in my conversation with our mutual friend on the airplane. We had some conversations about his experience in that other organization,
Hmm.
and when he heard about experiences I've had and how our church culture is, it I think gave him a positive feeling that there really are groups out there that believe the core beliefs just like he did, but don't have that control and that negativity that he was experiencing in his previous organization. So it's
Yeah.
important for us to have those lines of communication open, so these people don't just go away and
Right.
not go anywhere. I think that it's important that they realize that, hey, there are other people out there who believe the same things,
Yeah.
and hey, I was just in an organization that the leadership was not the best, and maybe that was the
Mhm.
issue here, rather than me just throwing the whole thing out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think accurate information too, right, as opposed to gossipy information
Right.
is important. So having folks dedicated to understanding and finding out the truth on the ground of things that transcends whatever silo you might be in is important, because then people can get accurate info. So it's one thing if someone comes out and goes to a independent group where people who've been independent for a long time and might have animosities towards corporate groups,
Hmm.
that's going to be a biased uh, response to that person. Conversely, if they go to a larger group, there might be a bias against a different large group or towards the independent community.
Hmm.
So being able to offer them a wide range of perspectives and people who are literally attending in each of these places uh, provides a benefit, because as a community we want to get away from gossip and more to what's
Hmm.
actually happening.
But maybe the Church of God needs some kind of program to help people who are in these more cultic churches that are personality based, helping them to transition to what to a normal Church of God,
Yeah,
to
we're hoping to
some
leverage
kind
the
of
local
program.
contacts for that kind of thing, in terms of because we have a number of folks who are involved, who came out of those types of groups you're referring to, and so
Yeah.
getting wind of that from them and then putting them in contact with someone locally and sort of being a part of that transition is sort of
Hmm.
one of the implicit parts of that.
So that's something that you can do as Church of God Network to kind of help transition people from from churches and stuff. I know the one of the best things I think you have is that map of all the local church
Yeah.
congregations. I don't know,
Yeah.
where are you up on that now? How many is there? Uh,
I think there's there's over 1,500 congregations, like over 110 different groups. Our data
This is
team's actually,
worldwide, right, Daniel?
yeah, completely internationally, United
mhm,
States, across the globe. Our data team is looking through one of the last sources we have of potential new congregations and aggregating those. So we might add a few dozen more to the map soon.
mhm,
But yeah, I guess the last thing I'll mention, because I know we're running up on time, but a big emphasis of ours as well going forward on the data side is finding out and mapping where the Church of God is, because we're going to start doing data releases. Our director of research has a passion for this kind of stuff, and we're going to leverage that congregation map data set
mhm,
for some analysis. We have an English speaking nation bias in terms of where we're aware of the locations in the Church of God, and if there were groups popping up independently just because they've been studying scripture and coming to the truth because they're being called, is much
mhm.
harder to know they exist if they're not going through an existing organization because of the language barrier and
Right.
the fact that they're not searching online in English usually, or we might not have material translated into the necessary languages. So one of our hopes and initiatives going forward is to try to find out where people are across the globe, and try to be in contact with them in a greater capacity as well.
All right. We are hitting up on the time that we need to go ahead and end this program, because we're gonna play this program for
Yeah.
everyone just a few moments. So
I do remember what Daniel's dad's going to talk about next month. It's heresy or falling away from the church, how that happens. So,
okay,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
sounds very interesting. Is there
yeah.
anything you want to leave us with before we go today, Daniel?
No, just for those who maybe aren't aware of us or haven't checked it out, churchofgodnetwork.org is the website,
Yeah.
and covenantconcepts.org is the website for Gary Johnson's nonprofit. They do great work. So, yeah, check us out. Reach out, volunteer if you want.
All
Thanks,
right.
Daniel.
Wonderful.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being a part of this. We're happy to have you here, and we'll have you again in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And again, thank everyone who's watching today. We'll see everybody next week on another edition of Prove All Things.